Now, it certainly feels like Game Week 12 is going to be a pretty popular time for FPL managers to use their wildcard. And if you're one of those managers, well, I've got a draft for you. Right, we're going to get straight into things then by talking about the goalkeeper and defenders that I want to pick. And I wanted to start off by looking at the clean sheet odds according to Elevenify. Elevenify is a fantastic model of projected clean sheets and goals. We'll go through the projected goals to help pick midfielders and forwards going on. But defenders are up first. I'm going to use this data to help pick some of the defenders in this team. There's one team, I think, that dominates the clean sheet odds, and that's Arsenal. Their fixtures, I think, for the next, what have we got there? 7 game weeks. You can see on the fixture ticker, we've got 6 with actual clean sheet, or sorry, 5 with clean sheet odds associated with them. The clean sheet odds look good, and I think the fixtures look good too. You know, I think regardless of how the Chelsea-Arsenal game goes, I'm recording this video before that game actually kicks off. So, you know, there could well be injuries in the Arsenal team, etc. But historically, over the last 2 seasons, Arsenal have been the best defence in the league, right? For goals conceded and expected goals conceded. So it's not fluke that they're a good defence. Yes, this season, they've certainly had a period of time where they've not been the best defence in the league, right? It's definitely looked like Liverpool are that way. But I always look back to historic data and larger sample sizes than what we're seeing so far from this season. And if you use that logic, it suggests that Arsenal are a strong defence, right? And I think those 7 fixtures they've got coming up. Nottingham Forest at home. Yes, they've got Chris Wood, but they're not a prolific team when it comes to scoring goals. They're more reliant on their defence to win games in their attack. West Ham just drew 0-0 with Everton. Man United, new manager, that might be a questionable one. Fulham, they don't blow teams away. Neither do Everton. Definitely do Crystal Palace don't, and Ipswich as well. You know, barring that Man United game, and even then, you know, you wouldn't completely rule out a clean sheet for Arsenal against Man United. I think those fixtures look really strong for potential clean sheets for Arsenal. So the goalkeeper and defenders that I'm going for, I've gone for a double Arsenal defence. I think Raya in goal is a good shout, and Gabriel in defence is a good shout as well. The one thing I would say about Raya, the best goalkeepers in FPL tend to be ones that keep an average amount of clean sheets. I think Arsenal will be amongst one of the best teams for clean sheets. So an average amount of clean sheets for the best goalkeeper, plus consistent saves bonus. And the question will be, he's done all right so far this season, to be fair, for saves as Raya, but I think in order to be really an elite top scoring goalkeeper in FPL this season, he needs to continue that theme of saves. But I think with those clean sheet odds coming up for that run of fixture, I think it's worth going for him. Just my opinion. You might want to go cheaper. If you go cheaper, you might be able to upgrade elsewhere. You know, that's your prerogative. But for me, I'm going to stick to Raya. Then I've gone for Gabriel. I think Gabriel is the strongest Arsenal defender. I'm going to look like an idiot basically if this video goes out and he gets injured against Chelsea, but I think he'll get through that game fine. But the one thing I would say about Gabriel, previously, well, up until Marino started playing for Arsenal, starting for Arsenal, Gabriel was like the main target for the Arsenal set pieces, which is where a lot of his goals, of course, were coming from. All of his goals were coming from set pieces, right? But with Marino in the team, there are just other options to aim for from corners, and it does look like he's not just the only target now. So I do think that's going to have a negative impact on his output in terms of goals. But again, just going back to those Arsenal fixtures, I don't think that matters. I think their clean sheet odds look really good, and they look so good in my opinion, especially if you're on your wildcard. Not many people who are not on their wildcard, in my mind, going to have Arsenal defence. And I think being on the wildcard allows you to be different to the crowd, but also make informed decisions around that. Hence why I think double Arsenal defence. The clean sheet odds are there on the models, and the fixtures, I think, back it up. Outside of that, I've gone for Lewis Hall, Kirkez, and Aït-Nouri as 3 defenders that could rotate with one another. And you can see O'Shea's in there as well at 4 million. I think that's a good set of other 4 defenders to go for. Lewis Hall seems to be starting now regularly for Newcastle, looking fairly attacking. Newcastle, we just go back to those clean sheet odds. They rank 4th in the league for total clean sheets or clean sheet odds for the next 5. So for that reason, I've gone for Lewis Hall. Aït-Nouri's got some good fixtures coming up. They, of course, just kept a clean sheet in game week 11. And he's just ridiculous from an attacking perspective. But if you want to go elsewhere with cheap defenders, depending on how much budget you have with this team, what I've got here is a list ranked on Fantasy Football Hub for the best defenders under, I think I've filtered by 4.7 million and below. for the next 5 game weeks. You've got Eight Nori, Luca Dean, Leif Davis, Kirkez, Konsa, Hall, and Poe Torres are your top defenders at this price point. So, you know, if there are any defenders in this team, cheap defenders in this team that you don't fancy, take a look at this list and you can swap them around. I think ultimately, some of these cheap defenders, there'll be much for muchness between them, really, in terms of points. I do think it's fair to say that Eight Nori is probably the outstanding one, although I would bear in mind the fact that he is on 4 yellow cards. Kirkez, I think he looks pretty good for Bournemouth. Bournemouth look pretty strong and have a nice fixture run, and so do Newcastle as well. So, yeah, I like the thought of being able to rotate between all of these players as well. So, that's my defence so far. Before going on to the midfielders and forwards, I wanted to look at another model from Elevenify of predicted goals. The top teams here, though, there are no real surprises. The top teams, realistically, for predicted goals are kind of the best teams in the league, or the teams you would rank as the best. So you've got Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs, even though they're a bit inconsistent, Chelsea, Newcastle, Villa, Bournemouth, Brighton, Man United. You know, no real surprises there, I don't think. It's certainly in terms of picking midfielders anyway. You can probably guess there's probably a key player missing from this draft, given I've got Saka, Palmer, and Salah in this team. But I think that's the way you have to play it if you're on your wildcard at the moment. Salah, Palmer, and Mbumo, Saka. I don't think I need to say a whole lot more about this midfield. I think they're probably 4 of the best midfielders in the game right now. The only other player for consideration that I haven't put in this draft, just because I wanted to make it affordable for absolutely everyone, I think you could potentially go for Bruno Fernandes instead of Mbumo. If you believe that, you know, under a new manager, Man United's semi-decent fixtures, although they do have Arsenal and Man City away in their next 5. If you believe Bruno Fernandes is a better long-term option than Mbumo and you can afford him, then go for it. But I wanted to make this team affordable for absolutely everyone. And I personally believe we haven't seen Man United play under their new manager. We don't know the position that Bruno Fernandes is going to adopt. We don't know how dangerous he will be as a result from an attacking perspective. I think it's fair to say he probably will remain fairly dangerous. But there's a lot of unknowns about those Man United players at the moment. Whereas Brentford, defensively, they've been pretty shocking, to be honest. I know that as a Flecken owner. But going forwards, they have had absolutely no problem scoring goals. And Mbumo is their talisman, largely plays roughly 90 minutes every game, takes penalties. He's very creative for them, gets on the end of chances. Yeah, I think he's a really good option. So I've gone for him alongside Salah, Palmer, and Saka. And again, I'm recording this while the Arsenal-Chelsea game is going on, and I've already got 4 players from that fixture in this team. So if anything changes, you won't actually see this video go out. But this is, I think, the best 4 midfielders you can choose in the game, and the 4 that I'm going for in this wildcard draft. On to the forwards then, and a couple of things that I wanted to talk about before talking about the actual players that I've picked is a ranking from FPL Review of the top forwards for the next 3 game weeks. Haaland is the number 1, but he's not going to make it in this team. I think if you're on your wildcard right now, there is a real justification that you don't need Erling Haaland in it. The fixtures for me for Haaland are not good enough to consider him as a captain for 2 or 3 game weeks. And after that point, you'll probably have enough free transfers accumulated, if you don't get really unlucky with injuries, etc., that you can buy him back by swapping out other players. So for the next 3 game weeks, I genuinely think you can get away without him. And outside of Haaland, the top forwards are Watkins, Havertz, Isak, Mateta, Raul Jimenez, Solanke, and Chris Wood, according to FPL Review. Now, I think it also makes sense to pad out your team with a couple of cheap strikers. There are so many cheap strikers to choose from, and we'll talk about who I think are my favourite cheap strikers in a second. But I think there's worth having one sort of, no, I wouldn't call them premium, half premium, I'm going to call them forwards. And that's a selection of Watkins, Havertz, and Isak. Now, I don't know about you. I definitely like and respect Ollie Watkins and Havertz. And don't get me wrong, we saw those Arsenal fixtures and they look good from an attacking perspective, right? But I'm already tripled up on Arsenal, so I can't get Havertz, which means it's a battle between Watkins and Isak. Last season, Isak finished on better underlying numbers per start than Watkins did, and better numbers per start than Watkins did. I think Watkins got 34 attacking returns in 38 games. Isak didn't get near that, but he played a heck of a lot less games. So per start, it actually worked out that he got more attacking returns per start. He's 0.6 million cheaper than Watkins, and he takes penalties for Newcastle. So for me, I think Isak is the next best striker compared to Haaland. So he's in the draft. Then outside of that, we've got the best cheap strikers. Now, what we've got here, similar to what I looked at for the defenders, is a view of the next 5 fixtures of all forwards that are less than 7 million in FPL right now. Chris Wood comes out on top. However, I don't actually think he's the best cheap striker anymore. I don't think he gets enough chances for Wolves to be worth it in the tough, for Forest, in the tough fixtures he has coming up, because the Forest fixtures do change coming up. And I think this is the projected goals here. The Forest projected goals are pretty woeful. They're 16th. In a couple of their games, they're expected to score less than 1 goal. So just something to bear in mind. I think Cunha is probably the best cheap striker right now. In good form for Wolves, looking exceptional when he's playing. Wolves have unbelievable fixtures. And when Sarabia isn't on the pitch, I'd actually hedge a bet that even when Sarabia is on the pitch, Cunha will take penalties. Raul Jimenez is a decent option too, but I'm just watching Brentford at the moment, and I'm so impressed with how they are playing from an attacking perspective. Wissa seems to be getting a boatload of chances every time I watch him play, and I think he is going to be a really good option. So for me, the 2 cheap strikers I would pick are Wissa and Cunha, alongside, of course, Isak. So that's the front 3 of this team. And just to finish things off, I put this through the Fantasy Football Hub AI team rating tool. You can find Fantasy Football Hub in a link in the description below. This team gets a 98% AI rating. And I think I'm being conscious that this team is affordable for everyone. If you should be able to, everyone watching this video should be able to buy this team right now. Some of you might have a bit more cash in the bank, which should allow you to upgrade maybe Lewis Hall and Boomer if you fancy it. Or maybe if you had a lot more money in the bank, you could go one less sort of pretty cheaper forward, for example. But, you know, I think the structure, most of the players here, I'd say this class is if you've got any level of budget in the game. So a 98% AI rating. Let me know what you think of the team in the comments. All right, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. I'll make another video before the international break begins. Well, while the international break is in play, I think, because I want to talk through my transfer plans, and then I might do a video on the season so far and review the stats and some of the key narratives, I guess. That's the right way to say it, the season so far. So this won't be my last video, but I thought it'd be useful. You know, Game Week 12 is going to be a popular time for people to play their wildcards. If you're on your wildcard, you might have played the chip already, be looking at players to buy. So hopefully this video is nicely timed for you. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments if there's any changes you would make to it. And subscribe to the Goal and Goal channel if you haven't already and you want to see more content from me. All right, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.